Right now, while you're breathing, two planets you will never visit are making a decision. Not a quick decision, not the kind that happens in a moment. A decision that takes 100,000 years to complete. And that decision is whether your descendants inherit a warm and living world, or a continent buried under 2 miles of solid ice. They have been making this decision for millions of years. They are making it today. And almost no one on Earth knows their names, are even involved. There is no alarm, no flash of light, no single night you could circle on a calendar. Just two giants out in the cold dark, pulling on Earth with a patience that makes the entire span of human civilization look like a single afternoon. This is not a story about distant planets you'll never see. This is a story about the machine that has been deciding the fate of ice on Earth. Hiding in plain sight, at the edge of the solar system, and why the planet you're standing on has never truly been in control of its own climate. Start with a fact that should not be true, but is. Earth's climate, stretched across hundreds of thousands of years, is not random. It doesn't drift. It doesn't wander. It keeps a beat cold, then warm, then cold again, over and over, with a regularity you would expect from a clock, not a planet. Ice sheets, more than 3 kilometers thick, have buried the land your cities sit on, melted and buried it again, more than 50 times. For a long time, nobody could say why. The answer came from a man working alone. With a pencil, Milutin Milankovic, a Serbian mathematician, spent years, including a stretch as a prisoner of war, filling notebooks with calculations nobody else was willing to attempt. He was working out, century by century, how the shape of Earth's orbit and the tilt of its axis slowly change over tens of thousands of years. No computer, no calculator, just arithmetic, chasing the idea that the ice ages were written in the geometry of how Earth moves around the sun. He was right. 3 things about Earth's motion shift on long, slow cycles. The shape of its orbit stretches and rounds. The tilt of its axis nods up and down, and the axis itself wobbles like a spinning top losing its balance. Stack those 3 rhythms together, and you get the pattern that drives the ice. But this raises the question that should have been bothering you since the beginning. What moves the geometry? Earth cannot do it to itself. And that is where the 2 giants step out of the dark. In 1976, researchers confirmed what Milankovitch had calculated with a pencil decades before the orbital rhythms were buried in the rock itself, written into seabed sediment laid down over 500,000 years. They called it the pacemaker of the ice ages. Let me make Jupiter's size real for a moment, because the word giant gets used until it means nothing. Jupiter is more than twice as massive as every other planet in the solar system combined. Pour all 7 other worlds onto one side of a scale. Jupiter still wins. Easily. More than 1,300 Earths could fit inside it. When something this heavy circles the sun, it doesn't just stay in its lane. Its gravity reaches inward, across hundreds of millions of kilometers, and it never stops pulling on us. Saturn, the second giant, is lighter, about 95 times the mass of Earth, and much farther away. But far away does not mean harmless. Think of Earth's orbit as a loop of wire, and Jupiter and Saturn as two hands, slowly bending it. One pulls it a little more oval. The other, over thousands of years, eases it back toward round. Neither hand is rushing, but they never let go, and they never tire. And there is a deeper reason. Saturn punches above its weight, a cosmic rhythm called resonance. For roughly every 5 orbits, Jupiter completes around the Sun. Saturn completes 2. Their gravitational pulls don't cancel into noise. They reinforce. It's like pushing a child on a swing at exactly the right moment. Instead of randomly, 2 giants pushing in rhythm can move things neither could move alone. Saturn is so light for its size that in theory, if you could find a bathtub large enough, the entire planet would float, less dense than water. And yet, that almost weightless giant still has enough reach to help tilt the balance between ice and open ground on a world it will never come near. The 2 objects deciding part of Earth's fate are a planet you could not float a boat on, and a planet that would float in a bathtub, working together across the emptiness, with a patience no living thing could match. The ice ages are not really about temperature, not the way you'd think. They are about geometry, about whether the far north gets enough summer sunlight to melt the previous winter's snow. When the orbit is wrong, when the tilt is off by just a fraction, summer in the northern hemisphere becomes too cool to finish the job. Snow that should have melted survives. And then the next winter arrives and adds more, and that snow reflects sunlight back into space, making the planet cooler still. More ice, more reflection, more cooling, a feedback loop that has buried continents. Now, put yourself inside one of those cold ages, around 20,000 years ago. If you live anywhere across the northern half of the world, imagine the spot beneath your feet, buried beneath a wall of ice, taller than the highest skyscraper in your city. Not a glacier you'd hike to, a frozen ceiling pressing down on the land where your home is. In some places more than 3 kilometers thick. 2 miles of solid ice, grinding slowly southward, scraping the ground flat as it goes. The sea has pulled back so far that beaches you know today would sit far inland, whole forests gone, replaced by frozen plain. And none of it was triggered by anything on Earth. The thing that decided your patch of the planet would freeze was the angle of sunlight in the far north, set by a wobble and a stretch in Earth's orbit, nudged by 2 planets you could not even see in the daytime sky. That is what it means to say the giants keep the rhythm dotted. Isn't an abstraction. It's a wall of ice where your street is. Over the last few million years, Earth has swung in and out of glaciation dozens of times. Each time, sea levels dropped more than 100 meters, exposing land bridges that early humans walked across to reach new continents. The map of the world you know, the coastlines, the islands, the places people first settled, was carved in part by a rhythm set in the outer solar system. To really understand Jupiter, we had to go there. And going there is its own quiet story of machines hurled into the dark on one-way trips. Jupiter has no surface you could ever stand on. None. Drop toward it, and you'd fall first through bands of pale ammonia clouds, then deeper into a hydrogen atmosphere that grows thicker and hotter the further down you go, until the pressure becomes so crushing that the gas around you stops behaving like gas at all. Thousands of kilometers down, the hydrogen is squeezed so hard it turns into a liquid metal dot, an ocean of metallic hydrogen wrapping the planet's core. A sea of a substance that doesn't exist anywhere on Earth. There is no line where atmosphere ends and ground begins. There's just more and worse and heavier all the way down. In 1995, the Galileo probe dropped into that atmosphere. It fell behind a heat shield that flared to thousands of degrees. It opened a parachute. It drifted through the clouds for 58 minutes, radioing back the first direct measurements ever taken from inside a giant planet. Temperature, pressure, the chemistry of the air, and then the rising heat and pressure killed the transmitter. The probe didn't crash. It simply stopped existing, swallowed by the planet it came to study. Right now, today, a spacecraft called Juno is looping over Jupiter's poles, its electronics sealed inside a vault of titanium to shield them from Jupiter's radiation storm. And Juno has told us something strange. Jupiter's core isn't the neat, solid ball we expected, Dot. It's something stranger, a fuzzy, smeared-out center that blurs into the layers above it. Jupiter also gives off more heat than it receives from the sun. It is slowly leaking warmth left over from its own formation, energy stored 4.5 billion years ago. It has been cooling at that rate for the entire age of the solar system. And it still isn't finished. A planet glowing faintly with a memory of how it was made. Now stay with me, because the implication here cuts close to home. The stable, mild stretch of climate that let human civilization happen was not guaranteed. We came out of the last ice age into a warm, steady winter, and we built everything we have inside it. Farming, cities, writing, every empire, every invention, every idea that has ever moved humanity forward. All of it fits inside one warm interval between glaciations. And the length and warmth of that interval is shaped, in part, by where Jupiter and Saturn have nudged our orbit. The giants set the room temperature. We just walked in and got comfortable, with no idea who was holding the thermostat before that sends you spiraling. Let me be honest about something. These orbital cycles are slow. We are talking tens of thousands of years for the rhythm to swing. On its own, this machine is not about to drop an ice age on your grandchildren, but there is a faster force acting on Earth's climate right now. The carbon we are pouring into the air, working on a time scale of decades, not millennia. The giant's clock is slow. What we are doing to the atmosphere is fast. Both are real. They just run at completely different speeds. But the unsettling thing, was never the speed. It's the indifference. This machine does not know we exist. It was turning long before there was anything alive to feel it, and it will keep turning long after the last trace of us is gone. We are tenants in a house whose foundations shift on a schedule we can barely perceive, paying rent in time we don't even know we owe. The warmth that built our entire world was an arrangement of gravity. We had no vote in and no power over. Pull all the way back and look at what we have actually uncovered. 2 planets far out in the cold, with their hands on the shape of Earth's orbit, a rhythm of ice and thaw they help keep, written into the rock and the glaciers of a world they will never touch. A warm window between glaciations that we happened to be born into and built our entire civilization inside. And a slow machine of gravity that started turning before our species existed and will keep turning long after we are gone. Completely unaware that anything down here ever learned its name, we are incredibly small. We live inside the slow breath of planets that have no idea we're here, that wouldn't notice if we vanished, that will go on shaping Earth's orbit for billions of years after the last of us is gone. But we figured out the rhythm anyway. We pulled it out of simulations and ice cores and layered cliffs of ancient seabed. And we understood for the first time in the history of life on this planet just how much of our warm, fragile, improbable story has always depended on giants we will never touch. The rocks remember Jupiter and Saturn, even though no single human ever could. That's what I want you to carry after this video ends. Not fear, not doom. Just the strange, quiet understanding that the stable sky, which let your ancestors stop running and start building, was handed to you by the slow turning of orbits shaped by worlds you'll never see. And you were lucky enough to be born in the warm, open window before the ice comes back. Jupiter and Saturn have been keeping time since long before we had a word for it. Tonight, just for a moment, we got to watch the clock.